It finally happened. I have been saying since episode 2000. I was hoping Tucker would be episode 2000, and he wasn't. And it's been months of just no Tucker on JRE. Finally, it happened. I told you guys it would be coming out. I released an episode at like 11 a.m. I told you it'd be coming out at 1 p.m., and it did. And we're going to be getting into some stuff. Now, I'm a little skeptical about what Tucker's talking about. I'm going to be honest with you. This whole KONA Blue thing. Now, not skeptical of aliens. I think they exist. I'm not skeptical of the fact that the U.S. government and all governments throughout the world are looking into these things. I completely believe that. What has me skeptical is the timing of it all. Now, we're going to get into that clip. I'm going to show you that. I got two clips, just Joe and Tucker talking about that. Then I'm going to show you a clip of just talking about what is KONA Blue. Then we're going to have some more on that, as well as David Grush. Then I'm going to show you a bunch of articles. Then I'm going to show you a side-by-side of what a Pentagon representative said and what Grush said, and we're going to see how that aligns, and we're going to give our thoughts on this whole thing. Let's get right into it. Don't forget about the new channel I got, Coach Carlson Media. Hit that subscribe button. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers. This is where I break away from the Rogan content, so if that's something you want to see, definitely go and check that channel out. Link in the description. Let's get into this Rogan clip.
The Project Aqua stuff? Did you see this?
No. What's that?
This is crazy.
Yeah, I guess we're rolling.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
No. You can. This is just someone just sent me this. This is
Project Aqua?
Yeah. Hold on. They just released, I think, by accident.
How does that happen?
It's KONA Blue. You familiar with this?
No.
KONA Blue is it was a program. Dude. I'm gonna send this to Homeland Security. Just released this.
Send it to me. I'll send it to Jamie.
And no, I got it right here. I'll just. I don't do email or what. I don't know how to airdrop anything.
You don't do email?
No. I haven't done email in many years.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you exist?
I do text.
Wow. Just text?
Yeah, I don't do email. I don't go on the fucking internet. I don't have a TV. I'm not into that. But anyway. No, that stuff is bad, you know.
Yeah, I guess.
That's my isolation tank. I just stay away from that shit. But anyway.
That's smart. Did you text it to me?
Yeah, I did. I think I did.
It didn't get to me.
Yeah, it just sends it. It's a big thing. Okay, so this is so amazing. So this is in there. They're talking about this. And this was just released. Talking about setting up this program, KONA Blue.
I didn't get it.
This is like a UAP program of some sort?
The medical division will have a small team of medical analysts under the direction of the chief physician and deputy administrator. They will organize data into a threat analysis based on medical findings, including but not limited to A, deaths and injuries as a result of interaction with advanced aerospace vehicles.
Here it is.
B, medical injuries as a result of other anomalies. C, collateral injuries, psychological effects to family members. So they're admitting that people are dying.
It's just like a tweet from US.
Is this it?
A day or two
Yeah.
ago.
What does that mean?
Other information on here.
Do you ever wonder if stuff like this is just disinformation?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I wonder if... I wonder a lot of things.
I'm sure you do.
But...
I would always assume that a lot of this stuff is nonsense.
Yeah, here's what we know, is that U.S. servicemen have died as a result of contact with or being in the proximity of these vehicles. And we know that because there are a lot of suits working their way through the VA system.
Yeah?
Where families, can't get compensated for the deaths or injuries to loved ones.
Because it's all under wraps, top secret.
Well, that's just a fact, okay, that is happening. So if there's, I guess, when there are measurable physical effects of a phenomenon, we can say conclusively the phenomenon is real.
Right.
And so, yeah.
But isn't it
is real. I mean, I guess we're sort of past the point of like, is it real? Yeah, it's real.
It's real in that there's these things that are moving in very bizarre ways, and they have these propulsion systems that violate what we know about propulsion systems. Retrieving data across dimensional space-time, develop remote viewing comms and countermeasures, determine baseline for physical transport across dimensional space-time barrier, rapid response medical teams for UFO interaction events. So how did they do this accidentally? Study conscious interactions with and control of technology.
So I got this from someone in the U.S. government who's well, look, let me just start by saying I don't know anything. but he sent me this. The above is 100% legit. I was read into this program but told never to tell anyone. It's now been released. As you can see, it began as a result of my old program, AATIP. I signed a document saying I would never talk about KONA Blue and similar efforts. I can't believe that AARO would have released it. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, here's what we do know, is that there's enough going on in the skies, but not just the skies, underwater, that the U.S. military has been forced to respond to it. So, like, move aircraft from one place to another because there are too many of these objects in the sky. That's actually happened. Chris Mellon just wrote a long piece about it. So it's real. The government is not controlling it. In fact, it's forcing the government, DOD, to respond. And we know that there is a real effort, and has been underway for a long time, to keep the public from knowing about it. But that's all known. That's established. I don't think any rational person would deny that. The question is, like, what is it actually? I mean, now is sort of the point.
Yeah.
So what is it actually? So I'm going to show you another clip just to string it along properly, because they start getting in the weeds a little bit, because Joe's a little skeptical of this whole thing. But it's very interesting because Tucker has talked about this before. Tucker was on a podcast called the Nelk Podcast with the Nelk Boys, Full Send podcast, and he talked about this exact same thing. And the way that these people are passing away is actually from the radiation. It's not like there's a ray gun or anything, but it's actually from being in the range of this massive radiation, and it's making these guys sick, and then they pass away. Now, this is actually similar to another guest that Joe Rogan had on the podcast. He had a documentary that he did. I forget what his name is, but he claimed that in Brazil, that somebody actually had a body of one of these beings, and he was trying to take it to a hospital. And he went from one place and they said no. He went to another place. So he was actually holding this alien body, and later on passed away because he was in its vicinity. Apparently it was giving off of radiation or some kind of disease. Maybe it's something like, the British to native people, and all of a sudden you just catch this disease that your body can't fight whatsoever, and then you pass away. So that's what he's talking about in regards to these people passing away. You can find it in the Full Send podcast with Tucker Carlson. If you go and watch that, there's even clips on it and everything. So go and find that. I might find it after we play this clip. Let's get back into it.
Then they're serving a bad force. And
well, when you say spiritual, like what makes you draw that conclusion that they're spiritual?
What's the obvious? I mean, spiritual may be the wrong word. Supernatural. They're beyond nature as we understand it. I mean, obviously they are. I mean, just chart their physical behavior. It doesn't, it goes outside of what we understand about physics. No visible means of propulsion, coming at indescribable speed, hitting the ocean, continuing at speeds that are impossible undersea. I mean, in other words, if I take a 9mm round or 7.62 by 39 and shoot you at 50 yards underwater in a swimming pool, and it's even more intense in salt water because it's denser, you could catch the bullet if it even makes it to you, right? So if you have a craft, any object underwater that's traveling at 500 knots as measured by sonar, right there, you're challenging our understanding of physics. Like, what is that? How can that be? So yeah,
they've tracked that. They've tracked things going 500 knots under the sea.
Yeah, really. Yeah, much faster than any object can actually go undersea. For sure. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on underwater, and a lot. And there's video of these things coming out of the sky into the water and also emerging from the water.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's all so blurry though.
I don't think it's
the
that
transmedium video.
Yeah, I don't think some of it's that blurry. I think some of it's crystal clear.
We just don't have access to it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Just we haven't seen it.
Correct.
So they have some stuff
for sure. So, but there's just a lot going on underwater, and it's measured. And so, whatever. I mean, these are all, again, this is like the most obvious observable level of it. But then you just ask yourself, like, what is this actually? And, if there's been extensive knowledge of this for decades, like maybe 80 years at least, if not going back to the 30s, 90 years, to what end? So there are two possible explanations, obvious explanations. The first is the one you often hear, which is this is so heavy that if the public were to know about it, it would be just disruptive. It would be too scary. Like, you don't want to scare people for no good reason. There's nothing we can do about it. And you also don't want to suggest that, the U.S. military isn't capable of protecting the country, the homeland. And it does suggest that. If you can't control these objects in your airspace, and that's known, if they can't, that's known, okay? then that's just a limit to the power of the U.S. military, and you don't want to tell people that because then they like won't believe that they're safe. I get it. But then there's a deeper level, which is like, okay, what's your relationship with these things? What is the U.S. government's relationship with these things? And there's evidence that there is a relationship and that it's longstanding. And that raises like a lot of questions about intent. And so like, what is that? And I just personally decided, you know, and people have been hurt by these things. You know, that's a fact. That's a fact. It's a knowable fact. It's a provable fact. And killed. And I'm not saying millions of people have been killed by whatever these things are, but people have been killed, and it's known because it's working its way through the courts out of the VA. So, I don't know, an object that is by definition supernatural, it's above the laws of nature as we understand them, and that has resulted in the deaths of people. We don't spend enough time thinking about like what that adds up to. Like, not good, actually, not good.
How many people do you think have died from these
I
things?
don't know, but I mean,
And is it radiation sickness? Is it like what's the
so the
cause of
person
death?
that I talked to, I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And
You're talking about Gary Nolan?
that's exactly who I'm talking about. He's effectively an expert witness in these cases, so he's an expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah, entirely credible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's got patents, so he's like a lot of Stanford University professors. He's like independently rich. I mean, he flew to. I live in a remote place, and he flew to my place at his own expense because he wanted to tell his story. So he's got no profit motive here. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal. And he's worked on this for over 10 years, assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know, because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them. And it's not exactly radiation, at least in his telling to me. So anyway, but the point is, people have died.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it does raise a lot of questions about like what the hell, right? What the hell?
Very interesting stuff. Now, again, this is very odd because Tucker Carlson also talks about how there's a spiritual component to all of this. So I don't understand how it's seemingly radiation, but then also there's a spiritual component and these things have been around forever. I'm not saying it has to be one or the other, but it definitely, it's hard to make sense of it all. Now, for me, I'm going to show you a clip right now of just them talking about, I want to find Tucker talking about the aliens. To see, the thing is with Nelk, the Nelk podcast, they took everything down. It's where he talked about Russia. It's where he talked about the NSA. It's where he talked about all these different things. And for some reason, they don't show it. Yeah, it's so weird. All right, let's move on to these clips instead here. So this is just them talking more about what KONA Blue actually is. News Nation. I'm a little skeptical of them too, ever since they hired Cuomo. Let's get into
Your
it.
reaction, Ross, to these declassified, now newly declassified documents in KONA Blue?
Good evening, Elizabeth. Well, look, it does sound sci-fi, but I can tell you there are people inside the Defense Department, former and serving, who do believe that the claims made in the KONA Blue documents were authentic. But that's vigorously disputed, of course, by the ARROW, the Pentagon's UAP investigation team. They did their historical review and published a few weeks ago, and they said, yes, there was this codename KONA Blue program that was proposed, never implemented, but proposed as a special access program, one of the deepest, darkest secrets in the US government. And they claim at ARROW that, of course, they investigated and they found no evidence to support claims of retrieved non-human technology. All I can tell you, Elizabeth, is that we now have a very clear difference of opinion inside the Defense Department and also inside the intelligence community. Because one of the things that's conspicuous, ever since that ARROW historical report was published a few weeks ago, which refuted KONA Blue's documents and said that there was nothing in the whole program, the allegations were based on false premises. What's been conspicuous is that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the intelligence czar that was appointed post 9/11 to centralize and control intelligence in the United States, they haven't backed the Pentagon's claims in the Arrow report.
Have they contradicted them, or are they just not commenting?
They're just not commenting. And it's very interesting because I'm told there is a split between the intelligence community and the Defense Department. The Pentagon's decided to bluff it out and go it alone. There are people who are passionately of the view that there is authentic, recovered, non-human technology in the possession of the United States. And they are determined to get access to it so that its utility can be exploited, weapons can be developed, technologies can be advanced to the benefit of the American people. The problem is there's a group inside the Pentagon, they believe, who are blocking access to this technology. And that's what the decision to not make KONA Blue a special access program was all about. This was an attempt by a group of committed people inside the Pentagon who do believe this technology exists, to try and make sure that they did everything properly by the book, by the law.
Is it
and
possible,
unfortunately, they were blocked.
Ross, is it possible that David Grush might have conflated? I mean, was it KONA Blue that he was talking about, or was he talking about a completely different program?
I'm sure the Pentagon would love you all to believe that David Grush is a deluded person who has no idea what he's talking about. And that's certainly the line they're pushing at the moment. What I can tell you is that there is an abundance of independent, objective witnesses who back what David Grush says to the hilt. And this is slowly going to come out, whether the Pentagon likes it or not. And unfortunately, we have a situation now where the government is actively being, I believe, misled by people in the Pentagon who have determined to try and cover up and deceive the American public.
Ross Coulthart, how did they come up with KONA Blue? Like, how's that a nickname for a top secret program to reverse engineer? I mean, I always wonder how they do that.
I know how they do it. They do it the same way guys make up names for weed. They just kind of look at it and they just go, I want to call it this. That sounds cool. You know? Literally. That's at least what I think. Now, with everything you just said, you know, is it real? Is it not real? It's obviously real because this video came out just yesterday. So it's obviously real, you know? There's no denying that. The documents came out. So I guess before they were saying it's not real, then these documents come out showing it is real. Now all of a sudden these things are starting to make David Grush seem a little more credible, which anybody who's watched the podcast quite a bit knows I have an issue with. I don't believe Grush, but after learning this stuff and seeing that it kind of correlates with what he was saying, I'm like, okay. I don't like the way that he came out as a whistleblower. I don't think he did it properly. I think a whistleblower should just blow the whistle. Like if you're in, you're in, but you can't blow the whistle. You know, imagine being a whistleblower for a company, but you still want to be a part of the company. It's just very odd to me. But I'll start considering what he has to say a little bit more. I know some of you have wanted me to do that for a while. Let's get into a little more of what this is. Another clip here.
The program David Grush says exists. News Nation's Joe Khalil is here now with more. Joe, there is a tiny credibility question here. The Pentagon has been saying for the past year there was never any such reverse engineering program. Now it says, oh, there was one, but it never really got started.
Yeah, I mean, there were rumors about this program, the code name KONA Blue, for a long time now. And it was only last month that they acknowledged for the first time ever that it existed. Now we are getting an inside look at how this program was propped up. So it's called KONA Blue. It is real. It was a special access program, very highly classified. It was proposed from the Pentagon to the Department of Homeland Security. We now have all of these declassified documents, and in them, it describes the purpose of the program as, and I'm going to quote here, acquiring, studying, and engineering technology that the U.S. got from UAPs or UFOs. In the documents, it refers to them as AAVs, Advanced Aerospace Vehicles. Ultimately, the program was scrapped by the Department of Homeland Security, but not before years of planning went into it from the Pentagon, and it describes in detail how they stood the program up. They set a budget, $12 million to $15 million the first year, going all the way up to $50 million down the road. And the program in these documents now also makes specific reference to locations in Nevada where some material may be housed. It also references recovered UAP material, personnel with knowledge of recovered technology, and also personnel who know of the whereabouts of this. And just lastly, if you think this sounds too sci-fi or that this was maybe one or two rogue employees at the Pentagon, in these documents it also shows that the Undersecretary of Science and Technology signed off on this program and approved it, saying in these documents that it was a necessary step for national security. So all of that is in here now. We did get a response from the Department of Homeland Security today, and they said simply, quote, while this program was considered under a prior administration, it was never fully established by the Department of Homeland Security. DHS has released these classified documents consistent with its commitment to transparency. So, Elizabeth, it looks like we now have some very clear specifics about what was in this, at least proposal, for this plan from the Pentagon.
Wait, you mentioned some budget figures there in the tens of millions of dollars. Was that money ever spent? Was money ever spent on Blue KONA?
I don't believe the money was spent. The money was effectively sort of earmarked within the DoD's budget or the Pentagon's budget, but the program, to my understanding, was scrapped before that money was spent because it was allocated specifically for year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 3 being an expectation for what they would need at that point.
And what do we make of the fact that they keep talking about locations in Nevada and material being housed in Nevada? What is that a reference to?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So it was referencing locations where the program was scoping out for if they had recovered these types of material or pieces of a recovered vehicle, where they may be housed, where they may be kept. They were bringing on a scientific team to study and do that kind of thing. So they were literally already scoping out locations where that type of work was going to happen. And it's all laid out there in these now declassified documents.
Very interesting. Now, here's the thing I definitely don't buy. If it was presented as an idea, there's no way they just said, oh, no, we're not going to do it. OK, just push that aside. It's kind of like Operation Northwoods, where a bunch of people wanted it to be signed off on. JFK said no. It doesn't mean they just scrapped that idea and those processes completely. Maybe they didn't do that exact situation, but that framework still existed to be done in other places. And I think this is the same thing where, yeah, maybe it didn't get approved. Maybe they didn't move on it. But here's the thing. Maybe as soon as it did get approved, the official story needs to be we're not moving on it. Maybe that's just how they do things. Maybe that's how they stay super secret. Maybe that's how they stay very deeply classified. By what's the last thing anybody heard about it? Oh, that we're not doing it. No one's doing it and it's done. It's just gone. Okay, perfect. Nobody's going to ask any more questions, right? So I definitely don't buy that they just stopped. If they have anything, obviously they're going to look into it. Obviously even if they didn't have anything, they're still going to be trying to reach out. Back in World War II, Germany was heavily into some weird stuff. And I don't know if they had any UFOs, UAPs, or anything like that. But they intimately were into the occult. They were trying to contact, and I know this sounds weird, but they were. Look into it. They were trying to contact, other dimensions, the other side, you could say. They were into some weird stuff. And I don't think that's the only government that went and tried to do some stuff like that. I'm sure they all look in. If they're into remote viewing, and this is a known thing, that governments have looked into remote viewing. And if you don't know what remote viewing is you're holding up 3 fingers right now. And then I'm supposed to close my eyes and I'm supposed to try and pinpoint where you are and then pinpoint where you yourself and then pinpoint the 3 fingers and know what you're doing in the room and everything. It's kind of I don't know, for lack of a better terms, telekinesis, but somebody could see everything that's going on around you. They know where you are. It was something that they were working on in order to find terrorists. At least that's what the official story was. To think that they just stopped working on stuff like that altogether, I think that's a little rich. And of course, the first thing they're going to say, like in this article, KONA Blue Secret. Let me move my screen here for you guys. Secret government program to investigate human consciousness anomalies doesn't exist, new reports say. And again, this was released March 8th. And now we're April 19th and stories changed. Obvious. So a lot of people came out saying this isn't real, and then these documents get released. This gentleman here, I'm going to show you a video of him talking, and then a video of Grush talking as well. But just to talk about some of the stuff they were actually trying to do in this whole thing, consciousness centers. This right here, I 100% believe they were doing. I just don't see why not. If you have the money and you could possibly do it and it could possibly work, why wouldn't you at least try? Consciousness centers. Expand on remote viewing and remote communication to communicate, retrieve data, and transport across dimensional time and space barrier. I know it sounds weird. I 100% believe that they were trying it. I'm not saying they're like Rick and Morty and they got some gun, like a little portal gun and they're jumping through portals. I'm not saying that. But to say that they weren't experimenting with that, because all you have to do to experiment with that type of stuff, remote viewing, is, again, literally, a guy is in a warehouse 20 miles away wearing a white shirt, and they have someone sitting here who seems to exhibit some kind of psychic powers, and they just tell him, "You're operative, find this person, tell us what they're wearing." Like that's literally an experiment that they do. Tell us his surroundings. And sometimes the people are correct. Actually, I have a story about that. Develop remote viewing countermeasures. Again, 100%. If they're trying to do it, they're obviously going to figure out how to counter it. Study consciousness interactions with and control of technology. I believe that 100%. Because you got to remember, that's just in our own minds that they're trying to do stuff like that. It's really cool that all this got released. But funny enough, I heard about this a long time ago. The first podcast I ever listened to, and it probably still exists, it's called Theater of the Mind. And the host was Kelly Howell. And she would touch on all these weird concepts. And it was the first time where I started hearing, alternative news or, conspiracies, if you want to call it that. And the first thing I ever heard from her was talking about remote viewing. And she interviewed someone who was actually one of these people. And he was explaining the entire thing. I was like 15 when I heard that. It was like more than 20 years ago. It's wild. Isn't it crazy to think when you're a teenager it was more than 20 years ago? Jeez, hate that. Okay, so another thing, extend remote viewing communication programs to communicate and retrieve. Okay, I already said that. Develop remote viewing and communicate. Yeah, countermeasures. Okay, this part here is new. Conduct experiments to determine baseline parameters for physical transport across dimensional space-time barrier, as opposed to communication and data transfer only. Whoa. So you know what that means, right? You can't even call it telekinesis. That's teleportation. That's teleportation, right? Conduct experiments to determine baseline parameters for physical transport across dimensional / time-space barrier, as opposed to communication and data transfer only. I think Tucker's right. Tucker mentions in this podcast a lot that there's a spiritual component. And as soon as I hear that, you think of mundane things like, yeah, they're going to transport themselves and what a great thing that would be militarily. The second I hear that, I think, what if there's something, and I know this is like outside the box, but this is why I do this stuff. What if there's something in another dimension and they want to bring that something over here? And for lack of a better, not even for lack of a better term, what I think, something demonic. And that's just what comes to mind for me, and then what do they want to transfer it into? Maybe they want to transfer it into these robots. Maybe they want to transfer it into what we know as AI. Maybe the thing we know as AI is actually stuff like this. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. This opens my mind. Again, I don't do any drugs anymore, so this is like the closest thing I'm getting. Deliverables. Experimental results and assessment reports will be produced on each separate activity. Results and reports will be maintained separate from other data reports. Very interesting, man. Just to think there are people right now who are working on this stuff. You know, like real Men in Black type people that are actually working on this. This is a real thing that they do. They wake up in the morning and they do this. And they've made breakthroughs and we'll never hear about it. You know, this is the type of stuff that Joe Rogan said he'd lie to his mom about if he could have access to. Maybe that's why he's going so hard for AI. I don't know. Just the speculation, of course. We love Rogan here. There he is. We love Rogan here. Medical centers create comprehensive database on all psychological and medical effects of advanced aerospace vehicles, AAVs, within the United States. The database will have pattern analysis and correlative capabilities. What the hell? This is wild. To think that, and here's the thing. All of this sounds really crazy, right? That thing says Tesla down there. Why does that say Tesla? This is all really crazy, right? But here's another crazy thing. People are claiming that this was released by mistake. That's why I'm so skeptical of the timing of this. And so, we did it by mistake. How could that happen by mistake? I'm sure all sorts of ridiculous things happen behind the scenes by mistake. How does this get released by mistake? Somebody either did this purposely, who was like a rogue agent type, or they released this purposely so we would now be introduced to this type of stuff existing. That way, when we see, and of course, this is just speculation, that way, when we see something, I don't know, a few months from now, a year from now, and it correlates with this, we're going to connect it to Conan Blue rather than connecting it to the spiritual realm. Just a thought. Why does this say Tesla? Create rapid response team of in-house physician scientist personnel that, under the supervision of contact physician and deputy administrator, can rapidly conduct MRI bracket 3 Tesla scans, rapidly conduct appropriate blood tests. Wow. So they need a team like this. Genetic tests, including tissue biopsies, blood sampling. So they're really talking about transporting people. Wow. I'm learning this in real time with you guys. I just found it and then I just wanted to read it. Justification for needs. Remote vision, remote communication, and the dematerialization techniques to observe, communicate, retrieve data, and transfer matter across dimensional space and time barriers will undoubtedly be of utmost interest, if not a top collection priority for adversarial intelligence / security services. Whoa. This cannot be released by accident. And if it was, that is kind of what's happening. I was going to say if it was, then they would be putting out a story about how none of this is real, and they are doing that. But again, this could be a whole distraction, because haven't we been so burnt out? Haven't we been so burnt out of UFO stuff? Hasn't the masses just ignored when Mexico was like, we got an alien body, and Grush was doing this thing everywhere? People were really ignoring it. The masses, because it was accessible to the masses. It wasn't something that you had to go and find in the deep depths of the internet. It was right on front pages, and people just didn't care, Let me just read this last one and then let's move on. Associated exotic technologies will likely involve extremely sophisticated concepts within the world of quantum mechanics, nuclear science, electromagnetic theory, gravitics, and thermodynamics. Given all of these have the potential to be used with catastrophic effects by adversaries, unusually an unusually high degree of operational security and read-on discretion is required. What on earth is going on, man? You know what? I was a little more skeptical, and after reading all that, I'm like, but you know what? It's also one of those things you want to be true. Rogan talks about that all the time. It's like you want those things to be true. I want to see Bigfoot while I'm trying to hunt a deer, and I want Bigfoot to come up to me and try and talk to me, and I'm the first person to meet Bigfoot. You know, I really want that. Now, listen, this is the Pentagon's Patrick Ryder versus whistleblower David Grush on the KONA Blue program. Let's go. Play this.
The Pentagon concluded that there is no evidence of UAPs being off-world technology, but it also said the government set up programs to reverse engineer such technology. Why did the government plan to study off-world technology if it says it doesn't have any proof?
Yeah, so as you highlight, no verifiable evidence that any UAP sighting represented extraterrestrial activity, that the U.S. government or private industry has ever had access to extraterrestrial technology, or that any information was illegally or inappropriately withheld from Congress, and alleged hidden UAP reverse engineering programs either do not exist or were misidentified authentic national security programs unrelated to extraterrestrial activity or technology.
In the previous UFO program's records, so the OSAP program, which ran roughly 2008 to 2010 or so, and that was in the Defense Intelligence Agency. And this has been released by FOIA. You can actually go to DIA's website and read this, but the paperwork included this very odd request from Senator Harry Reid. He sent a letter to the Deputy Secretary of Defense asking for something called a Provisional Special Access Program, or PSAP. I've never seen in my career a member of Congress ask the Department of Defense to develop a very classified program. And usually it's the reverse, right? Congress wants more transparency and declassification. And I'm like, this is very odd. I don't know what's going on here. Why is Harry Reid saying that the OSAP program found something they needed to develop this provisional special access program that is waived and bigoted, which is the most serious of SAPs. Waived means it's limited congressionally reported. That's 10 U.S. Code Section 119. And bigoted meaning it's like by name. And there was a list of individuals that needed to be briefed. Of course, Senator Reid, Inouye, and a couple, members of Gang of Eight wanted to be on it. And so I asked people that both worked on that program, but also people that were tangential to it that worked in certain intelligence agencies. Like, so what was this about? Well, a certain clear defense contractor wanted to transfer some of their material holdings to DIA for our program. It was all crash retrieval material. And this was a way to horizontally protect, as we call it, that information and that physical material from a certain other government program and custodian that lent that contractor material in the past. And I was like, wait, are you saying we have UFO material? That's crazy. Like, are you sure it's UFO material? Like, this isn't like we went and got a wreckage of a Russian bomber and it just happened to be weird or something like that. And no, they were dead serious. So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me, that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right?
Interesting. I'll admit it. Gresh is starting to make more sense. I'll definitely admit it. I made a video calling him the biggest fraud on JRE, but it's starting to make a little more sense. But here's the thing that I will say in my own defense. Everything that he said while he was sitting down with Tucker in that clip, these are all things my wife, she was doing the research for me when it came to the whole David Grush thing. She found everything that he was saying. Now, does that mean he's correct? Yes, but it also means that everything that he was saying was retrievable on the internet. All you had to do was search for it, and you can compile it, and then you could just say all of it as if you know this firsthand. Everything, even about Senator Reid, everything. about his death, how much money he got. I think he was given $10 million, and it didn't make sense why he was given $10 million. They said they weren't going to do it, then they did. It was very odd. And then the company where the money came from, there's a whole thing to it, but it's seeming very weird. And here's the thing. I never actually thought that there's no way that they have these craft and that they're working on it. Like, of course, I think if they find it, they're going to work on it. Of course. I mean, you know, this type of story goes right back to Bob Lazar. I mean, let's be honest. This is exactly what Bob Lazar was talking about, re-engineering things, right? But I definitely didn't think, I still kind of don't think that Grush, he just doesn't make any sense. Again, I'll go back to how he says he wants to protect the U.S. and their secrets, but also wants to whistleblow. He's whistleblowing, but he's not leaving the government, and he doesn't want to leave his position. You know, he'll whistleblow, but he doesn't want to say everything. It's just not how a whistleblower operates. In fact, in terms of him working in the government, he just seems like an annoyance. It's like this annoying guy doesn't want to leave, still wants to work with us, but won't stop doing interviews. Like, this is crazy. He just keeps continuing. And that's why, at the end of the day, when I see all of this and I see the timing, I think, is this just some kind of distraction? Like, think about this. And here's the other thing. Look at the news elsewhere. Maybe this doesn't mean much to Canada. Maybe it doesn't mean much to South America. But I don't know. I would say take a look outside of everything. Because right now, it seems like the border, the crisis, the election, the fact that Trump is leading massively, you know, Biden is, you know, visiting Wawas with nobody in them. And like, that's supposed to be like him being a regular guy. It's just all these things right now are happening. And then all of a sudden this drops. And now today, after when the Tucker Carlson episode is released, all of these outlets start covering KONA Blue. Now, I'm not saying, like, it makes sense. Tucker talked about it. Tucker's followed by many people. I'm talking about it now because of Tucker, you know? But it's just interesting. I always tend to look at the timing of things. And I do think sometimes this UFO stuff, unless they're really handing something over, they're really showing people something, I do tend to think it's a distraction. I don't know. Or again, maybe it's a little predictive programming. Maybe they're setting the stage for something. The world is a stage, as they say. I don't know, but I'll let you decide. That's why I made the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think of the whole thing. I'm out.